Hi guys, welcome to Crime Tuesday. This story is going to be about the MOORS murders, Myra Hindley and Ian Brady. I'm going to start and end each of the parts with this picture, purely as I want to put these pictures and remind everybody of these pictures, not of the pictures of those monsters that took these children away. So this is part one, and let's get into it. Myra Hindley was born in Manchester area on the 23rd of July 1942, raised in somewhat of a working class family, although her parents Nellie and Bob beat her on a regular occasion as a child. The house was of poor condition due to her parents' severe drinking problem. Myra took the brunt, I think, of most of what went on in that house. Also, I've been told. At the age of 5, however, she went to live with her grandma, where she stayed throughout her whole time until she got sent to jail at the age of 23. However, her parents did still have parental rights over her. It wasn't so much as, they just gave up rights and left her. They still very much had input in her upbringing and how she would be brought up, I suppose, is the best way. However, she does or did state later in life a incident that took place which she believed molded her. However, I'm not convinced, but who am I to judge? I'm not a doctor of any shape or form. But anyway, this is what she says was the catalyst, I suppose. She was 8 years of age. She got into a fight with a little boy of the same age. This little boy scrammed her or punched her and made her cheek have a scram and a bleed. She ran off crying. She was very upset by this. This had been like a huge deal to her. She ran to her parents' house and crying. And her father basically told her to get the heck out and to go and deal with it. Otherwise, you're going to get a leathering. A leathering is you get the belt. She then proceeded to find this little boy and beat holy shit into him. I'm not going to lie. She knocked him clean out. And she sort of says that that was the catalyst of how that she sort of had that thing that she could use her strength over people and they would leave her alone, do as she said. Now, do I believe that? Not so much, because in the UK, I'm not sure about anywhere else, but in the UK, that was a very well, everyone did it, every parent did it. If you went home crying because you lost a fight, you were told to get out and deal with it. Go knit them back. It wasn't a, oh, they're there, we'll go and talk to the parents tomorrow. It wasn't like that back in the day. It certainly wasn't for my childhood, and none of my friends like that either. So again, do I believe her? No, I do believe that she was just trying to make up more bullshit excuses, which she done throughout her whole time. Ian Brady was born as Ian Duncan Stewart and was born on the 2nd of January 1938 in Glasgow in Scotland to an unmarried mother named Peggy Stewart. A few months later, she was forced to place him with another family. Unmarried mothers back then, it was so shone upon. The couple that took him and later adopted him was called Mary and John Sloan. They also had 4 biological children, but still took in Ian as part of their own growing family. Lots of accusations were made towards Brady growing up, that he would abuse animals, that he was a bit of sadistic, and so on and so forth. He adamantly refutes this and says it's 100% not true. As for school, he really was just like a normal young boy, actually very, very intelligent young boy. He actually attended a school for quote unquote above average children called Shorelands Academy. However, his behavior came unscrewed or unhinged, I suppose you could say there. He got into a lot of trouble there. By the age of 15, he'd already sort of been in front of a magistrate's. Now, a magistrate's here is just the same as a court, but it's for lesser offences. Been in front of the magistrate twice by the age of 15 for burglary and house break-ins. At 15, he left school, decided that he didn't want to do school anymore, and he went on to become a little like T-boy, I suppose you would call him. That didn't last long. He then went into the butchering trade as a butcher's boy. Now, basically, a butcher's boy would be go for, go and get this, go and get that kind, that kind of thing, and be trained in it. He had a relationship very early on with a girl. This is not her, by the way. This is his biological mum, by the name of Evelyn Grant. However, it didn't end well, as he threatened her with a penknife or a flip knife, I suppose you'd call it. Just before his 17th birthday, however, he was placed on probation with conditions. He went to live with his mum here, who would move to Manchester at this point. Not far after that, however, he was still getting into more trouble. We're around this sort of time between sort of the 17, 18 mark. His mum had already remarried at that point to a fruit porter, which is basically somebody who sells fruit, by the name of Brady. He obviously then took that name, and that's where, I guess, Ian Brady as such was born. Within a year or two of living in Manchester, he got into so much trouble. At one point, he got sent to Strangeways. Now, Strangeways for an 18-year-old kid, I still find that fascinating, that they'd send someone who was only doing a 3 stretch to Strangeways rather than a Borstal of such. I don't know whether the judge was trying to do the scared straight kind of thing, because Strangeways, is not a great prison. It's not, not that any prison's a great prison, but that one is quite notorious. It's got very, very hardened criminals in there. He did, however, serve his time. Not much later on, he spent 2 years at a Borstal, which is what I would expect at that age, to go to a Borstal to try and be, quote-unquote, reformed and be sort of led into society, as a good member, I suppose. Upon his release from the Borstal, however, which was November 57, Brady returned to Manchester, where he took a job labouring. He hated it. Since he hated the labouring job so much, he decided to better himself and go back to school, and he proceeded to go to the library, pick up a bunch of books. Now, this is the type of guy, he is a very, very intelligent man, which is just incredible. He picked up a bunch of books, decided that he was going to teach himself. He did, from what I could work out, odd classes here and there, doing school, but from what I could make out, it was more like a part-time, but done a lot at home, which astonished his parents, in all honesty, because they didn't think that he would be able to sit there by himself and sort of crack on and get it all done. And he did really well, and he absorbs things very, very easily. In January 1959, Brady applied for a job as a chemical distribution company. He got the job. Not surprising. He's a smart bloke. He was regarded as a very well-mannered, polite, quiet man with a short fuse, which I've heard a lot of people sort of say that about him, that, he liked his own company. He was very much of a loner, very much, very polite but well-mannered, but you tick him off and his fuse is very short. He taught himself German. He was very much into, Nazi memorabilia and reading about that sort of stuff that were going on around that sort of that time and stuff. And this is where he met Myra Hindley. The day that Hindley sort of even just laid eyes on Brady, she became obsessed. Her diary entries became more and more obsessed as time went on. She was infatuated, completely and utterly infatuated, to the point of changing her hair color, changing the way she dresses. Literally, she was completely infatuated. The first time, however, they spoke was on the 27th of July. Not long after that, Brady would give Hindley books to read so that they can discuss the books on breaks or read out loud to each other on breaks, which, by itself is kind of weird, but what can I say? They're both weird and freaking odd. On the 22nd of December, however, that year, he actually asked her out on a date to the movies. However, this was not any quote-unquote normal movie. This was Brady seeing maybe how far or how she would react. They went to see a X-rated movie, and she seemed fine with that. And they carried on reading very much more Nazi memorabilia, Nazi images, books, etc. became quite a thing within their relationship. She did, however, I think it was around sort of the 6-month mark. Other people say sooner, other people say later, but from what I've read, it seems that a huge majority agree on the 6-month mark. She wrote a letter to her friend stating that she was a bit concerned about, quote unquote, his ways of how he behaved or how he spoke or treated her. God knows, it wasn't made public. However, it didn't seem to stop her. She continually changed. She went to bottle blonde, even though she was dyed, her hair was black naturally. She went to bottle blonde. She would start wearing shorter skirts, leather jackets, knee-high boots, and they continued their romance, I suppose you want to call it, continually going to X-rated movies. What normal people go to movies. This couple would go to the library and read Nazi stuff. This couple would go to X-rated movies. So it kind of gives you a little bit of an insight on how their relationship was starting, how she was absolutely infatuatedly in love with, whatever you want to call it, with Brady. Hindley claimed early in 63 is where Brady would start talking about, the perfect murder or the perfect bank robbery or the perfect crime, and they would sit and fantasize, I suppose, about quote unquote the perfect thing to do and get away with it. I've read, you all know I'm very much into my crimes, my true crimes. I've read this a lot with couples that killed, they talk about it for some length. However, with these two, they really didn't think about it for long before the murders actually took place. In June in 63, Brady moved in with Hindley and her grandma. And the first murder took place in July. So there really wasn't that much time, where I know with other couples, with like when the couple becomes a couple and they start sort of murdering, abusing, or whatever the case may be of what the couples do, there's very much that time span of where they fantasize about doing it. They, will fantasize about the perfect murder. They'll fantasize about the perfect crime. These, however, really didn't. If her claims are correct, that it was the beginning of 63 that he started just sort of openly talking about the perfect crime, to then the first crime being committed on the 12th of July that same year, that really isn't that many months before the fantasy and the talking wasn't enough anymore for these two. The first victim of Hindley and Brady was Pauline Reade, a 16-year-old local girl, actually one of Hindley's sister's, Maureen's, friends from school. There really isn't many details on Pauline, unfortunately. We can guesstimate with what happened and what details we did have with the others, that they did a lot. I'm sure you can figure it out. And then murdered and then taken to the moors, and buried up in the moors. The second victim of Hindley and Brady was John Kilbride. He was murdered on the 23rd of November. A huge search was put out for this young lad. There was, 700 statements taken, or over 700 statements taken. There was over 500 missing flyers put up. There was over 2,000 people looking for him in wastelands and, genuinely searching everywhere for this little boy. But nothing came up. Nobody had saw him. He just disappeared off the face of the earth. Like he was just gone. There was no explanation. Nobody had seen him. It was incredible. It was just so sad. Just a little boy that just vanished off the face of the earth. Keith Bennett was the third victim of Hindley and Brady's. He went missing on the 16th of June 1964. He was meant to be staying with his granny for the night, as his mum, Winnie, was supposed to be going to bingo. She had walked him to basically to watch him cross the main road, which he had done 1,000 times before, and then he would then to go on to his granny's that lived just a few streets over. It wasn't miles away, it wasn't far, it wasn't a huge deal. He never turned up to his granny's house. Granny thought that he had just stayed home and didn't bother. his mum Winnie just thought, you know, he's at Granny's, so he didn't get told the police that he was missing until they sort of realised later on. The thing with Keith is, as well as he was and still is to this day, the only one that they haven't got the remains from. There's still, like, poor Winnie went to her grave not knowing where her baby is. His stepfather was a suspect for a super long time. They took him in on a number of occasions to question him at the cop shop, you know, like it was just a mess. And it wasn't until very much later that actually Hindley and Brady actually admitted to the murder of him and Pauline. In August 1964, Myra Hindley's sister, Maureen, married a young man by the name of David Smith. It was kind of a rush job, as Hindley's sister was pregnant. At some point, the four of them decided to go on a little trip to the Lake District. I don't know, it's just a place in the UK, which is a beautiful place, but it's a place in the UK. Smith and Brady took an instant shine to each other. They were very much, you know, inseparable. They wanted to do everything together. They would, like, mastermind and plan again, like robberies and bank robberies and how to, how to get away with it, the perfect crime, and back to sort of how to make money easy and quick. Smith was known to the police. He wasn't some clean-cut young guy. He'd been in trouble. He'd been in front of the magistrates a few times for petty theft, petty crimes, you know, nothing too major. During this time, though, you know, Hindley got very jealous that Brady was spending so much time with Smith. She, however, just sort of went into it and did as she was told, but she did gain sort of better relationship with her younger sister through this time. On Boxing Day 1964, which is the 26th of December, Hindley took her grandma to stay with relatives for the night, forbidding her to come back to the house. The grandma stated that this was unusual. She wasn't normally not allowed home, kind of thing. Sadly, that was the night that Leslie Ann Downey, aged 10, went missing from a fun fair. Now, she went to a fun fair with two of her friends and one of their mums, I believe. Girls being girls, kids being kids, you know, they didn't stay with the parents. And back then it really wasn't, you know, I remember growing up, and I remember my mum always like saying, don't speak to strange men. You know, I tell my nieces and nephews now, just don't speak to any strangers, full stop, you know, stranger danger. But back then it really was, you know, just don't speak to strange men. So Leslie Ann disappeared from there. She was taken back to the grandma's house. We know a little bit more of what happened to Leslie Ann only later on, when the police discovered audio tapes with her voice on that her mum had to identify. These tapes were of her screaming, begging, saying that she wanted her mum, and please, I want my mum. And you also hear in those tapes Myra Hindley telling her to shut the F up and do as you're told, etc., etc. Despite, again, a huge search within the area, you know, volunteers, flyers, interviews, it was just, no one saw sight nor sound of this little girl. Nobody, literally, the last person was at the fun fair and the ride that she was on, and she was gone. So I can only imagine, like, the hell that this this little tiny baby, you know, went through. It just, I don't know, it just seems incredible. And it's just so sad. During the time of sort of Boxing Day incident up to the next, it was being told that Brady spent, you know, a lot of time trying to mold Smith, maybe is the right way of putting it, into being more of his partner in crime. You know, giving him, like he did with Hindley, giving him books to read, giving him quizzes on said books, and, you know, they became quite inseparable, and, you know, even going as far as, you know, like actually planning out an armed robbery, you know, with their escape routes, which post office, the whole 9 yards. I think at that point, from Boxing Day to October, which is the final murder, I think Brady genuinely thought he had his play, and he could literally, he's molded him like he did with Hindley. That's the impression that was given. How true? Again, I don't know. Do I feel that he would have done an armed robbery? Yeah, probably. Murder, on the other hand, I just think that's gone a little bit too far for him, as we'll see in a little while. So I don't know. For me, I feel, yeah, he would have gone down the armed robbery route, or at least, you know, some kind of robbery, or, you know, but killing a child, I think that probably would have pushed him, and did push it too far. He didn't obviously mould him as good as he did Hindley. On the 6th of October 1965, Brady and Hindley took 17-year-old Edward Evans. Edward was picked up from a train station locally. I believe he was returning from a friend's house or something to those sort of things. They picked him up, took him back to Hindley's grandma's house. He gave up a bit of a struggle being a 17-year-old lad. I'm sure he had a bit of strength behind him, where the others were all very much younger and didn't have the strength maybe that he did. Brady told Hindley to go and get Smith, to which she did. Smith came in, and so did Hindley. He was face down on the sofa with his legs hanging off the sofa, and Brady was standing over him and hit him with a wrench of some shape or form. Now, Brady had hurt himself during, or Edward had hurt him during this struggle, and they couldn't take him to the MOORS like they had the rest. So Hindley and Brady and Smith decided to place him in the spare bedroom until they could the next day go and put him in the MOORS where they had, you know, put everyone else. After the incident, Smith went home. It was, you know, super early in the morning, like 3 a.m. He woke up his wife, Maureen, Myra Hindley's sister, to make him a cup of tea. He was extremely shaken up by what had happened. He was freaked out. He drank his cup of tea, proceeded to literally vomit everywhere. He armed himself whilst in the house with a screwdriver, a butcher's knife. He was terrified that Brady was going to come and get him and his wife. He waited till daylight to go to the telephone box. You know, back then, house phones and mobiles, you know, you had to be quite wealthy to have a house phone, and mobiles were just non-existent. So he waited for daylight. While still armed, he goes to the phone box and he calls the police, gives them the details of what happened the night previous, and the police tell him to wait at the call box. They're going to come and send a officer to pick him up, which they did. The officer picked him up and he was taken to Hyde Park Police Station, where he was he just spilt. He told exactly what happened, where everything was, etc., etc. At this point, then the detective, or a superintendent actually, and a detective went to the house at Walbrook Avenue, where they was dressed as like a UPS, a delivery driver. They gained entry where Brady was laying in bed, sort of tending to his wounds that he had done, or Edward had done the night before. They asked if they could search the premises. They agreed. In the UK, you have to have permission to serve the premises unless you've got a search warrant. You can agree to have them searched, but again, it sort of goes back. But they agreed. Unfortunately, there was one door that was locked. The officer proceeded to ask Hindley, where's the key to the door? She was pretty much like, oh, it's in work, I haven't got it here. And the superintendent, Bob Talbot, said, okay, no problem, I'll drive you to your work to pick it up. And Hindley was, pretty shook up by that, and to which Brady told her to just give them the key, which she did. She gave them the key to the spare bedroom where they inevitably found where Edward's body was. They then arrested on the spot Brady, but they did not arrest her, which is crazy when you think about it nowadays. But back then, like, it just wasn't, women did go to jail. Obviously there are women jails, but it wasn't a thing that women would generally do this. If a woman murdered, it was, their husbands for abuse, or I don't know. I just think back then it was really not known that women were such psychopaths as blokes can be, kind of principle. As I was saying, Ian was arrested. The only thing he actually said was, quote unquote, Eddie and I got into a row which got out of hand. Whatever. However, Myra Hindley was not arrested at this time. She, however, did want to go to the police station with Ian. She didn't want to be separated. Her and Brady are, they are inseparable. They allowed it, which obviously they wouldn't do that nowadays, but they allowed it to get her for questioning, I suppose. She just basically reiterated what she was told to say by Brady, I'm guessing. And he was held on remand. She was sent home. Now, during this time, is just crazy to me that somebody, is being found murdered in their house and she's not arrested. So Hindley was back at the house for a whole 5 friggin' days before she was arrested. They obviously searched the place, got everything that they needed. I'm guessing after they went through stuff. As I said on Leslie Ann Downey, there was audio. They'd obviously found that. And she then was arrested 5 days later, and they were both held on remand. Remand is like, I think I've explained this before, when you're held on remand is like a no bail hold kind of principle. There's no getting out, no matter how much you beg and plead, there's no getting out. it just seems crazy that in those 5 days she didn't even try to hide anything. She didn't try and tamper with evidence. She literally left it all there for them to find, which I find absolutely incredible. Like, you know, is it just that she was 23 and she was young and dumb? Is it that she just didn't give a shit? I don't know. I honestly, I honest to God don't know. It was just crazy. They did suspect obviously of more than the ones that they could prove. Now, they got arrested and charged with the murder of just 3. They didn't get charged with Pauline or with Keith's murder at this point, but they were arrested and charged with those 3 crimes. Thanks for watching part 1. Don't forget to come back next week for part 2 of this case, which will be the trial and their years in jail, prison, and different prisons, and, you know, the affairs with officers, etc., etc., trying to starve themselves. There's a whole heap to come. So don't forget to tune in next week. Bye, guys.